Welcome everyone, and good afternoon from Brussels. My name is Nouri Afai, and I'm the new Policy Director for the Nature Conservancy in Europe. I'm also your moderator for today. Thank you all for joining this session, which is about water resiliency and how it can be improved through nature-based solutions and regenerative agriculture. This week, you've probably already heard quite a bit about water. It was World Water Day on Tuesday, and this week, some of our colleagues have been in Dakar, Senegal, for the 9th World Water Forum. So today's discussion is very timely indeed. We all know that productive, resilient food systems need clean, accessible, and abundant fresh water. But what's perhaps less understood is that nature is the key to securing our water and food futures. And how can we harness the power of nature to protect our water supplies? And of course, with food security concerns now coming on top of our planet's biodiversity and climate crises, agricultural models that work in partnership with nature are more important than ever. So today we aim to explore this and learn more about some of the latest best practice and discuss how we can achieve even more if we put focus and partnerships to work together in this space. It is therefore my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Firstly, we're going to hear from my colleague Saswati Bora, TNC's Director of Regenerative Food Systems, who's a leading expert on improving food systems around the world, including from her time at the World Economic Forum and the World Bank. Then we shall hear from our panelists. Firstly, Truca Schmor, Global Sustainability Director for Water at Cargill. Truca leads the development and implementation of the Global Water Strategy and Water Compliance Programs at Cargill. And then Emmanuel Rurema, Executive Director of Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund. And I must confess, I'm particularly keen to hear Emmanuel tell us more about this team's groundbreaking work, as I'm originally from Kenya myself. And then we shall be pleased to hear from Muriel Jaju, Water Cycle and Sustainability Director at Danone, who's been leading her company's approach to water across the whole entire value chain. After each guest has shared a short introduction about their work, we'll then get into a panel discussion with you as the audience, who will also be able to put forward your questions. I'm going to try to keep us very much to time. And so without any further delay, a warm welcome now to Saswati Bora. Saswati, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Noor, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this session. And I think we can all agree that the premise of this session cannot be more timely. And we all agree that food systems must be water resilient. And there are three interrelated issues that sort of justifies our approach. I mean, we know that water supply and climate change is leading to vulnerabilities for food systems. We know that food production drives the majority of our water consumption globally, causing significant ecosystem damages. And we are also seeing that the competition for fresh water between cities and agriculture is projected to grow due to rapid urbanizations. So the world has taken notice. The World Economic Forum, where I used to work, has ranked water crisis as a top risk for nearly a decade in our global risk report. And we are seeing increasing attention to this from the business community. More of whom, many of them in the panel today will highlight this issue from their perspective. So I would just like to spend today a little bit of time to talk about the Nature Conservancy and how we are working on water resilient food systems. We are basically working on 4 key issue areas. The first is on looking at advocacy. Ahead of the UN Food Systems Summit last year, the Nature Conservancy joined a statement on water resilient food systems led by the Global Resilience Partnerships and many of the other partners who are on this session today. And we continue to work on this theme, including by hosting a session at COP26 in Glasgow, and also mobilizing our global coalitions and advocacy efforts. The second is on science. TNC is a science-based organization, and last year in October, we released a flagship report on regenerative foodscapes, which addressed the global potential of nature-based solutions in agriculture. We noted that global irrigation efficiency is estimated to be around 20 to 30%. So there is an increasingly strong opportunity to improve water use efficiency. And it just cannot be overstated that if we are looking to reduce water demand, we need to look at both a combination of improving water use efficiency and also controlling for water extraction. The report also mapped the diversity of world's food production systems to identify what we call foodscape, more than 80 foodscape classes based on their biophysical and management attributes. And we believe that by mapping foodscapes can help us to deliver on the potential for nature-based solutions, which are more tailored to local context. So just to consider this simple scenario for water, we computed that if we increase the efficiency of water use to the 90th percentile in each foodscape, we can reduce the global demand for agriculture, for water for agriculture by around 15%. By noting that these are, of course, global assumptions, this highlights the potential for significant transformation in how we use water for agriculture and food systems. And a third area of work that we are leading is on action relating to how do we catalyze action on the ground. The TNC is organizing its work around foodscapes by putting food systems at the center of a landscape and ecosystem approach. So over the next decade, we are planning to complement the science by leading the development of around 12 to 15 diverse foodscapes prototypes in several regions that will focus on elevating these nature-based solutions that can be scaled further through interventions in policies, economic opportunity, catalytic financing, and corporate action. And we are finding that as we design these foodscapes, we have made around 5 commitments to date. We are seeing that a key consideration in our design has been watersheds or aquifers, which are setting the boundaries and leading to mapping of our strategies. For example, in Argentina, in Gran Chaco, we see that water stress is providing an organizing principle for our strategy and also a forum for interaction between government and key stakeholders. In Northwest India, in Punjab and Haryana, of course, groundwater sustainability is a key issue that we have to solve for before we can look at food systems transformation. And the last area of work that TNC is doing is on how do we measure progress. Now, SDG 6.4 calls for increasing water use efficiency. But to balance water demand so that nature and people can thrive, it remains an elusive goal for conservation organizations such as us. But we recognize that this also provides a significant opportunity, especially in our foodscapes work. And although how we measure may differ for individual foodscapes, we need to look at 2 key interventions. First, in documenting the change in water consumptions to ensure that any changes are reflected in water balance, both for the environment and people, and then looking also at the public and private benefits from interventions. Public benefits could include environmental flows for ecosystem, reliable community water supply, and private benefits for farmers can be helpful to drive sustainable and equitable transitions. But of course, for any kind of measurements, we need improved data and information sharing. So lastly, for us, 2 key messages that I would like to leave here is that we know that a range of nature-based solutions can be deployed. But one key lesson is that it's just not irrigation practices directly that can be the only mechanism to build freshwater resilience. Many of the agronomic practices, including on soil health management, can also help build resilient in food systems. And lastly, what I would like to emphasize is that we need a systems approach for water resilient food systems. Obviously, nature-based solutions cannot be the only panacea for all of what's afflicting the world's food production challenges, but we feel that it is a vital and probably often marginalized interventions that need to be enabled with a larger suite of interventions related to corporate action, policy, financing, and technologies that can ensure that we have a lasting and positive change to the world's food production systems. With that, I would like to pause here and thank you for the opportunity in handing it back to you, Noor.
Thank you, Saswati. Thank you. And we'll look forward to welcoming you back on the panel to help us explore some of these themes further. Now I'd like to welcome Truca. Truca, welcome onto the virtual stage here. Let's wait till you've had a chance to.
Yes, thank you, Noor.
Hi, Truca. So having listened to that, Truca, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you at Cargill are using nature-based solutions?
Yes, I'm more than happy to. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to share one of our programs. So Cargill is as Cargill, we have a very unique role in a unique position in and impact in multiple supply chains that touch upon agriculture and food systems. And so the program I wanted to share with you is our Regen Connect program. So Cargill has been enrolling farmers in Regen Connect, a new regenerative agriculture program that pays farmers for improved soil health practices and positive environmental outcomes. The new program actually connects farmers to this growing ecosystem marketplace and will help scale the voluntary adoption of regenerative agricultural practices. So what you see here on the screen is like water resources are central to this, but what is so important is that by looking at these soil health practices, there are aspects of carbon that's captured in the soil. There is aspects of farmer livelihood through building out the resiliency with the farmers. And that's one of the things that we see as very important as we develop these programs. These programs provide water resiliency. They help like recharge these aquifers by planting cover crops, by improving the soil health, by keeping the nutrients in. So they help improve the water resiliency, but they also help on other aspects and really provide like this holistic view towards these programs. The other aspects of us that's very important that we see as a key driving mechanism behind the implementation is that it connects across this whole value chain. So through our position, we are partnering upstream with growers on more sustainable agricultural practices, but also often connecting with customers downstream who are seeking more sustainable products for their consumers. And this position also helps us to share the information and challenges across the supply chain as a whole. At Cargill, we have looked at like what does water resiliency mean? So how can we create healthy food systems? And through that approach, we have mapped our supply chains and looked at where can we drive the change and what does it take to actually advance on those practices. And but then with that information, see how can we help on one hand the farmers, but also help our customers and the consumers downstream, so that together we have the information that is needed to take the food system to the next level.
Thank you, Truca. So that's the case study that you'd like to present. We're going to come back to that because I think you raised lots of very interesting points there that we'll want to explore. Let's then turn to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, if I can welcome you onto the screen.
Thank you, Jean Bonheur. Buenas noches, bonsoir, goedenavond, good evening, guten Abend. Wherever you are, I'm greeting you from the evening because in Arabic we have an evening. It's a pleasure and honor to be part of this seminar and to talk about the nature-based solution as an element of resilience for water security. As the Upper Tanana Water Fund, what is it? Upper Tanana Water Fund is actually, it's a payment mechanism for ecosystem which helps us to restore the nature. The Upper Tanana Water Fund was started in 2015 with the Nature Conservancy, who was a pioneer in this. And the TNC got the major water supply company in Kenya, and then one of the private sector company, Pentea, who's played a key role globally in the water. And the three companies, they founded this water fund in Kenya with the support from public sector and private sector in Kenya. It started as a project which was trying to address the issue of water supply to the city of Nairobi. Nairobi is a city which has a population above 4 million, and the majority of the water we get in Nairobi, by 95%, come from the area of the Upper Tana area, which provide the water through the river Tana. And the same river provides approximately 65% of the electricity generation of Kenya through hydropower. Now, the problem we have was that the catchment area, which is the hilly area, They had an issue which was caused by deforestation, and the farmer were doing a lot of farming practices in the wetland area. And those practices has led to erosion and runoffs, which were bringing a lot of sediment to the rivers. And then it led to reduction of the water coming to the city, and water which was coming to the city was so dirty, which made it very difficult to clean the water, make it available for the consumer of Nairobi. So that was the problem which we're facing here in Kenya. And then this project was aiming to try to tackle this problem by using nature-based solution. Now, what did it do? First, we start with this sensitization of the people in the catchment area to explain to them that the farming practices done in the catchment area have a big impact on the rivers and therefore on the water stream. Now, of course, to get the people or the farmers in the catchment area to be motivated to contribute with the conservation, we need to come up with this level of incentive. So what we did first was to convince them to leave the riparian area and go start farming up in the hills so that the wetland can be restored. Now, to bring the farmer in the hilly area, you need to bring a solution for water, because if you take them from the river, they need the water for farming. So what we did, we start first being innovative by looking to get a system to collect water for the farmers, because in Kenya we have a 2 rainy season, the rest of the year is dry. So we came up with the water pans, where on the farmer's land we dig an area where we collect water, rainwater, and that water can be used in the dry season to irrigate his farm up in the hills. And beside the water pans, we assist the farmer to get drip kit for irrigation. Now, when this happens, the farmers start seeing a reason why they can move from the wetlands and they do farming in the hill area. Number 2, in a collaboration with the local governments, especially the 4 counties where we operate, we start giving training to the farmers on how they can do a smart agriculture by giving them diversified tree seedlings, not only tree to protect the soil, but also tree to increase the agriculture yields. We start giving avocados and other different fruit trees. With that, the farmer, when they're planting the tree and napier grasses to hold the soil, they were also cultivating some crops which can bring them income. So that was the win-win. So by doing that, they increase the income, but also they're helping us to reduce the soil erosion, which are affecting the rivers. Now, for the 6 years when the Water Fund has been operating as a project, we've seen improvement. Improvement have been, as you can see on these slides, that first the river become cleaner, we get increased flow of the water, and this data have been confirmed by the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company, who receive the water in the dams. But also on the other hand, we have also Regen, who is the largest electricity producer in Kenya, who confirmed that the quality of water which was coming to the turbines to produce electricity has been cleaner. At the bottom left, you see a graph of the reduction in the chemical which were used in the water treatment. So, and more important benefit from us is that all those farmers we work with, which are at the moment at 51,000 farmers, we monitored and record the increase in the revenue generated. So the total number we have now is that all those farmers, they earn $3 million more than they used to earn before. So which is a tremendous benefit for our partners. Now, having showed the benefit of this program in the 5 years of the project, the partners had as objective that this project has to become a sustainable model. So from the year 2018, we have started an endowment fund so that we get money from the partners, which we put in the endowment fund to enable this institution to continue to run in perpetuity. So that endowment fund was to be capitalized at $5 million US. At the moment, we are at 2.4 million, and we're in the process now to harvest the next 2.6 million. Once we reach that level, the water fund will have a lifetime guarantee for existence, so they can continue to do what you're doing in this catchment area, but also to expand in the other area of those counties. Because as we stand today, the area we are targeting is 100,000 hectares or 1,000 square kilometers. And right now we've been active only in 35% of that area. So that is an indication that what the Water Fund was aiming to improve the water quality in the flow coming to Nairobi has been achieved, while we are also helping our most important partner, who are farmers, to be uplifted in their livelihood through more earning through the agriculture practices in the farms. This water fund was the first one in Africa. Currently, the other water funds which are being developed following the model done in Nairobi. Now, the last point I want to share with you will be what was the reason for success for this water fund. What I will call as a major reason for success was the structure. The structure was based on private-public partnership, whereby we get the institutions from the government, private sector benefit from the water, but also the civil society, while the farmers in the catchment area will work together. And then this fund also is operating with the 3 levels of governance. The first one is a board of trustees, which has 10 members. Those are the people with the fiduciary responsibility of the trust, because the water fund is registered in Kenya as a public charitable trust. The second level of governance is a board of management, which has currently about 80 members, representing various company and institutions supporting the water fund. The third level of governance is a county advisory committee, which is technically a technical advisory team consisting of experts working in the local governments in those 4 counties we operate. And so those are the 3 bodies overseeing the activity of the water fund. And then since the water fund in 2021 has transited into an independent entity, it has currently 5 staff. One is the conservation program manager, who's in charge of the conservation. Another one is a feed conservation coordinator. Another one is a monitoring evaluation officer. The 3 are supported by finance administration officer and an executive director who support the team and do the management work. So ladies and gentlemen, that was my story I want to share with you about the case study of the Upper Tana Water Fund. And I hope that it gives you enough insight into this case study, and I hope to get more questions from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Asante sana. Wow, there's some fascinating work there, and we're definitely going to come back to you to find out more. Just to complete the picture for our panelists, it's my pleasure to invite Muriel now. Muriel from Danone. Hi, Muriel.
Hi.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Happy to be with you to speak about my favorite topic, which is really water. My job is to make sure that every day in all operation, all activity we are preserving, regenerating or restoring water. And the connection with agriculture for a food company is really obvious. So my pleasure today was to share with you one project we have initiated a few months ago, last year, in South Africa, so in the southern Drakensberg. We have a dairy factory in these regions, and obviously dairy is really a very important activity for Danone. So this project is about the landscape approach we have initiated in Danone, and especially on this case, on the milk sourcing area, where we have mainly from large-scale farms. In this region, as you all know, that the water resource and the water access is really an important topic for the communities and also for the farmers, for a few reasons, just to, of course, secure the water supply, but also regarding the cost for them, they have high costs for the energy just to bring the water to the field where they need just to use it. So within Danone, this is crucial to build, of course, a resilient and a sustainable business. You can imagine we are a private company, so we cannot deny it. But moreover, more than that, it is essential for us to have a resilient and a sustainable supply chain, integrating the farmers to help them to lower the impact on the natural resources, but also to increase their revenue and livelihoods, to sustain their activity for the benefit of the planet and the people. So however, Danone, we are very conscious that Danone and his farmer cannot change and sustain the water in this geography alone. And our approach is really based on two elements which are essential, which is the first one is to have a landscape approach, and I will explain to you what we mean by that. And the second one is to have a collective action with all the water users. So making the positive impact that all of us, we are trying to reach is really important to have this collaborative approach where we could make the difference on the territory. And of course, how we do it using the different type of nature-based solution. And as regenerative agriculture is one of them, these practices could have really a strong impact for nature and people, but also alien species management or other approach locally adapted depending on the local situation. So few elements for us which are important is like the first element when you start such kind of project, complex project with a lot of users, is really to understand the context and scoping the area of interventions, to tailor-made the action, to tailor the actions. It's critical just to have the right action on the right place with the right people to have the right impact. And again, we come back to not only implement practices, but implement practices for a positive impact or for impact at least. So that's the first point, number one. The number two is again, I'm repeating, but is a collective approach. Really important to have coalition of all the players, all the water users, all the activities players in these territories to combine the energy and just to reach the right impact by piloting first, but then scaling up this initiative. The second element for us is really important also is the science-based. It's important to start these diagnoses based on science. First one, understanding about the water resources, the water cycle locally, and in general, we do it with our hydrogeologist teams that we have internally in close collaboration with the local academics, because it's really important to also develop knowledge and understanding at the local level about the water cycle and the water resources. So that one aspect, and the second one is social economic study that we do with local NGO or organization to understand the landscape use today and tomorrow, again, to define the right actions. So when we have this baselining defined for each activity that we think we could have really a positive impact, and you can see on the screen the example with 4 of the potential activity that has been identified here, we design a business case underlying the role and responsibility of each stakeholder and the impact we are expecting from each stream. In this case, especially, we have identified 4 streams that you can see, and there is direct impact on some implementation of NBS or regenerative agriculture practices, working with the farmers, and indirect also actions, providing, for example, the water access to the local population. For the local water access, we have identified 2 potential social entrepreneurs we are working with that are testing different models to bring the safe drinking water affordably to the remote communities and help them to really focus on other activity that will help them to improve their livelihoods and also to develop some new activity for their own businesses. For Danone also, because we are a big player within the milk and the dairy part as other companies. Our responsibility is to support the dairy farmers transition toward the regenerative agriculture. So we are working with them on the field to explain what it is, how they could do, which practices they could apply in which zone for which impact. And to unleash this transition, we had to change the milk price scheme. As the previous speaker mentioned, it's really important just to do some action, but also we need to pay for this transition and we need to help the farmers just to do this transition. So we really wanted to unleash this transition and we changed the milk price scheme, tying it up to regenerative agriculture performance. And this one is quite new. And we are planning to roll out these practices to the second activity we have for the small emerging farmers. This is completely a different approach, but the end game is similar. Make sure that from the beginning, this farmer, we take all the learning and knowledge of the big farms and implement at their scale for the implementation and adapting the regenerative practices. So 2 points of attention I wanted to emphasize is really the replicability. I'm not sure it's an English word, sorry for that if this is a Frenchy one, but we need to duplicate and replicate the different practices. So every time we are thinking about a specific practices, we look about the direct impact, but also the potential for replicability. And that's really important, again, to make sure that, because the positive impact will come from the scale-up exercise. So it could be, first of all, we will do it at the level of the South Africa countries, but it could be enlarged and deployed within Africa and in different places. Second point of attention for us is really the business cases. All of you know that I would say water has no cost or has a very low cost, and it's not enough to build a business case. So that's why it's so important that all the people together, we are working as a private, as a public organization on this approach on the business cases, building them. And this is really a pre-competitiveness approach. There is no way that we do not combine all the energy. We need a specific regulatory framework. We need some incentive, and we need just to start within that. And we pay for all the pilot just to show case to the people that the practices are really working. And then we need just to have some collaboration with also the financial organization to scale up the initiatives. So that part is really important. And we know is not always easy just to make all the people working together, but that's really a key success factor for the future. And another point which is critical that my colleagues already mentioned is like, you cannot separate the water topic versus the other sustainability topic. So obviously, we are looking at the water benefits, the quality and the quantity, but when you preserve the water resource, when you are working on that, you are improving the soil health, and you are improving the biodiversity. It seems obvious for the technical people, but not always easy to make this understanding for the local people. And we do all these elements by the improvement of the soil health. And it has, of course, an impact on nature, on planet, whatever we call it, but also on the social aspect to really make them owner of this transition, this new way of working. So that's really important also to include the social aspect of it. And to use, for us to use the NBS is really important to bring this multi-benefit for the planet and the people. So this is just one illustration, but we have few projects around the world, and we are very happy to share it because it's important to share knowledge, know-how, approach, and practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Muriel. That's fantastic. So in the spirit of sharing, to your last point there, I'm going to invite Manuel and Truca to come back as panelists so that we can discuss together and also see what the audience may wish to ask you. I'm going to start by perhaps picking up on some specific things that each of you raised in your respective presentations. Let's start with you, Emmanuel, because you talked about expanding into other counties in Kenya, and I'm just wondering, sort of thinking beyond that, do you see this as a model that could be that holds potential to be expanded even further, and what do you see as the key success factors for being able to expand perhaps even internationally such an innovative model as the Water Fund? We start with you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, the Upper Tana Water Fund can be used as a model for expansion in other area. Already in Kenya, we see that the TNC is already setting up another water fund along Eldoret, using the same principle and approach. Of course, the implementation might be different based on the problem they want to solve, and also other critical condition and the need to respect. Besides here in Kenya, also we see across Africa, a few other water fund being set up. There is one in Cape Town, which has already been established and got very strong support from Cape Town government, and to solve the water issue they've been facing in Cape Town, particularly, but in general in South Africa, which was triggered by the 0 day, as we have experienced it a couple of years back. Now, the key success factor for this model, as I mentioned before I close my presentation, was first a good scientific approach, that a proper study is done to look at the problem to be addressed and the various alternative solutions to be implemented. Number two, besides scientific approach, you need to have a proper governance structure, because a proper governance structure being a payment for ecosystem, you require that to have a proper mechanism in place to manage the funds received and deploy them reasonably for the right approach, in order to get support from many various donors. And we have seen that based on what we have, we are getting good support from the Kenya private sector. And number three, it's very important to put the partner at the conservation area. In this case, is a farmer at the forefront. So not only the beneficiary of the city now be getting more water, cleaner water, but very important, the partner, the farmer on the farm will do plant tree, where you plant napier grass to hold the soil. To remove them from the wetland and to bring them to upper hill, they need to have a certain benefit. And the benefit the partner have seen was improvement in the knowledge for smart farming. Number two, an increase in the yield. Otherwise, they will not be motivated. There must be a win-win somehow. So that's what I'll give as an answer to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So you talked about a number of the success factors there, and you talked about also, key being public-private partnerships. Let me turn to Muriel and Truka. Is there anything from what Emmanuel said there that you want to comment on there, in terms of the fact that I think both of you have talked about the importance of partnerships there, and it's evident that the success in the scaling of an initiative, as Manuel has described, is ultimately going to be optimized if we can get more actors behind it. Muriel, would you like to perhaps start?
Yeah, of course. The point is really, as Emmanuel was saying, is like we need to have all the actors working together just to set the condition, just to scale up the initiatives. So we need just to have the different people working together on that. So that's why we need the private and the public working together on that to help on making the difference. So what does it mean concretely? It means that more and more we have seen that the financial organization and institution, they really want to invest on NBS, on positive impact actions. And there is a lot of money there that we could take. On the other side, we have a lot of projects that local people are trying just to develop. And we have some issue on connecting, on making the same language and connecting the two to make the connection in between the financial flow and the real projects on the field. So where the public organization could help, it could help on having a legal or regulatory framework that will help the incentive and the support of the local initiative of the people. I think this is really something very important to make a difference for tomorrow. And the second one is also, as we just said, is like we need to have some local initiative. We need to pilot actions, again, because each territory is very different. And based on this pilot that can be done, the collective action together on the territories could help to scale up and to impact more about it. So it's, I would say, a cross responsibility. We used to say that water is a shared resources. So share resource means also share responsibility, and we need to share about the care we have and the means we are putting in place to make the difference. And on this action, we have seen that the financial equations is moving. There is more and more initiative in different countries to help to have this regulatory and financial framework to help the local projects.
Thanks, Muriel. And you mentioned the role of regulatory incentives. I'm going to invite you to maybe give us an example and perhaps also then extend that question to our other panelists, to Truca and Emmanuel as well. What is the role of policy and regulatory incentives? So Muriel, would you like to kick us off on that?
Yeah, so it could be maybe a little bit long for discussion to explain about the action. Maybe my colleagues could say that. I would say that I don't know. It's just a personal opinion. If there is really a specifically leading country or region on this field, I would just say that looking at the trends today, that we can see everywhere in the world, we are clearly seeing a shift in the way that people look at the water security and NDS and the way that they would like to invest, and they are ready to invest on it. So we have a few examples, but again, I will be generic because I cannot go in details, but we see the emergence of the new incentive scheme by the public sector, for example, in Europe, more and more. That's something that we can see. We have a lot of activity in Indonesia. Asia is one of our priority, and in Indonesia, the private finance is really moving and supporting the transition and unlocking funding for NBS. So there is opportunity there, and this is where we can connect the dots and help the people. And for example, we have seen also the proof of the concept, like some water funds, for example, in Mexico and Latin America are emerging and help to scale with positive impact. So that's different approach in the different regions, but all of them nourishing the transformation we need to do.
Thank you, Muriel. Truca, I don't know if you have any view on the role of governments. We've heard Muriel say regulatory incentives are important. Is government action required, or can this actually go ahead with the private sector in the lead?
So I think that one of the aspects of it is as the others have said, like there's so much local context to the water solutions that we are looking for. So also what governments can do really depend on that local context. If you look at the challenge that's ahead of us, like one of the key issues that we see is that we need mechanisms that are truly scalable. Like the situation today is that we have a number of amazing pilots or amazing initiatives of nature-based solutions. But each of these solutions require a team of stakeholders, require to adapt that knowledge, that local hydrologists, that very in-depth work to identify what the right solutions are. And I think one of the things that we're really struggle to find almost like that flying wheel that can create those scalable solutions. And I think that is the area where we have been looking for. So if you look at how we've been approaching that with Cargill, it's really about where is that position for us where we can drive that scale. If you look at the regenerative agriculture that we have today, by working and engaging with these farmers, we have scaled up our implementation of soil health practices to 500,000 acres. The moment that you talk about 500,000 acres, that's like the size of an area of the province in the Netherlands. And if you look at the commitments that we are taking to see how far we can scale that, then you're seeing that in North America alone, we're looking at addressing 10 million acres. The moment that you're looking at these very, very large scale programs, there is this essential part of it is saying we have to work together with our stakeholders, with the farmers, to find solutions that work for them. But then it also means that if there are any roadblocks or if there are ways that we can accelerate that, then we need to work together with our partners, with our governments, to find those solutions that are truly scalable, so that it's not like going from one solution to the next, from one region to the next region, but really looking at meeting farmers where they are today, because these farmers, they own their land, they know their land, but they also are the key to the solution if we can work together with them. And I think that is where we have to find the right balance between, on one hand, like governments looking at what can be done through policies, whether that's at a national level or at a European level or even at a local level, or what can be done from meeting them where they are. And an essential part is about de-risking that supply chain, because for these farmers, for these growers, like if they change their practices, they are taking the risk. And in the end, who will the issues that are faced if we're not changing, if we are running out of water? You see that if we're not acting, if you see that like the governments end up with the larger problem. I think Emmanuel pointed out like the situation in Cape Town with Day Zero. It's like that is where you see is like if we're running out of water, then you get a real emergency. Then you see that governments are forced to step in. But in the end, ideally, we are way earlier and we can work together with these governments to then together come up with solutions.
Thanks. Well, you mentioned Emmanuel. Let's Emmanuel come in on that as well. And Emmanuel, give you the opportunity perhaps to also comment on the same question there, the role of governments and policy, Emmanuel. How do you see us, optimizing that role?
No, as I can see that here in Kenya, but also across Africa, we are so much passionate about water in general. Yes, the government has the mandate to do something, but the fact is not enough is being done. And whenever I need a nature-based solution, the problem which is being addressed might be affecting certain part of the community, but in general, we are all interconnected. Everybody's affected by such problem. And a nature-based solution, once implemented, the benefit, it's across the board. So there are many people who benefit from that. Therefore, I think very important to identify who are beneficiary of the NBS, which is being implemented, and find a way to regulate. Like if I talk about water specific, like in this case in Kenya, we are appealing to the regulatory body, for example, to set up a levy on water, especially for the heavy users. Because if a certain amount of water come into the city, we know the residents are not the major water consumer, it's the main industries. Industry who utilize water for electricity generation or for food manufacturing, and they go sell the product to the consumer. So those companies to have a fair share in contributing for the payment for those NBS. And luckily now we are getting private sector who are becoming aware of the problem. The way we do that, we invite corporate leaders, we take them to the field to see the activity being done by the farmer, so that they understand how those NBS are transforming the farmer's life, but also contribute to the water solution. And then they're coming forward with this financial support to the water fund. But again, they become, because they have a kind of social responsibility. Most of the corporates now, they have a sustainable program. But to reach or to upscale such NBS, I think it's very important that the government and the policy makers, they look much more deeper and they set up certain policy which enable these NBS to be sustainable on long term, but also to be upscaled to a larger part of the communities. Yes, it is necessary. It's not enough what is being done. And I think that's one area we need to put much more effort through dialogue, through communication, sensitization of all the stakeholders. That is very important to have people on body representing all stakeholders. Number two, which I forgot to mention, the success factor, it's good to have in those governance structure very respected individual and a corporation in the country, because that's where now whatever you bring out as a message, get people take you serious because you have key figures as a part of your supporting people. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That's a really comprehensive set of advice there, and clear we need all actors from what you were saying. Now, I want to turn for a moment to a theme that each and every one of you have touched on, which is the importance of incentivizing farmers. And I think in your own way, each of you have talked about that, and in particular, I think you were talking about making sure that the milk price is a key driver in your example there, and you talked about a just transition. Now, so there are some folks out there who, when they hear about these things, may be concerned that this could affect consumers and end prices. So, what do you say when challenged on that? Does this inevitably have to mean that we see prices across the board going up for consumers in what are, let's face it, times when budgets are tight? Let's start with you, Muriel, if we can.
Yes, I think just to be honest with you, it's when we have started to think about this milk price scheme. The first discussion and barrier, I would say, were internally with our procurement team, because this is really a new approach. They have to think a little bit differently, and just to value everything we do is not just a discussion on quality, quantity. It's broader. It's really a discussion with the farmers just to explain the why and the how we will manage that. So I would say this is, first of all, the transformation internally. That's my first answer. The second one is like, again, and sorry to say that, but all the different countries have some consumer reference which are different. We have seen in some country clearly a strong request demand for milk, for local milk production, and for sustainability milk production, or low carbon milk production, whatever we call it. And in some country, of course, maybe, but not of course, maybe more developed, we call developed country, that they are ready to pay more. And that's really something that we are discussing, valuing, and that's why it's so important to explain what we are doing with the farmers, because at the end, it's the farmer who are making the transitions. So in some countries, yes, the connection is quite easy, and you can enroll your customers and just to have activity, a blended activity together. In some other ones, it's much more difficult just to pass this one. So that's why it's so important to have this co-funding, just to find some balance for the farmers that, again, they are doing the transition. So I think that everything starts by them, with them, and we need to be there to support them. So I would say that the scheme is a little bit, and the approach a little bit different, but still, even internally, some transition in the private sector to do on our own and our teams. So
thank you, Muriel. Thanks for addressing that. Let me turn to Chuka, because Chuka, with the same question in mind, you yourself talked about the importance of engaging downstream customers, and you, I think, talked about the importance of downstream customers themselves wanting more from sustainability. What do you say about that? What is the way to ensure that the downstream customers are very much aware and a part of this journey?
So I think it's this awareness and engagement, I think, is a very important component, especially with water. One of the things we see is like there's a very, very much a strong awareness around the urgency around acting on climate and acting on carbon reductions. But on the other hand, what we also see is, like with water, quite often there are many people who is like they take it for granted until it's not there anymore, until it becomes a crisis. And I think that is the need that's there to together kind of step away from focusing on this one silo or this one urgent thing that is top of mind for everyone, to much more holistic programs that look at how we can actually combine our efforts. So one of the things we see with by including water resiliency is by looking at like, where do we need to focus on nutrient management, for example? Where are there concerns about water quality? Quite often there can be a link around building a case to optimize fertilizer application and nutrient management, combining that with reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and having an attractive business case. And I think those holistic views are the ones that in the end will get us farther than when we solely look at like a need for carbon reductions. And I think also by taking that additional lens of saying, well, where do we have to focus on water quality, or where do we have to focus on aquifer recharge to create more resiliency, and therefore focus on practices that help that recharge? I think taking that lens and taking our downstream customers along on that journey will help to build solutions that are more attractive, both from kind of what can be achieved, because I strongly believe that those programs all are more effective in driving the change that we are all looking for. Because in the end, it's not that we only care about carbon, we care about like the whole ecosystem. It's just that like some are easier to get and easier to communicate. And so that's a role that we have to play to really like work together along that value chain to then drive these meaningful actions where it's needed most, from including both carbon and a farmer livelihood and a water lens to it.
Thank you, Truca. Emmanuel, as we've heard, the world can't afford to wait when it comes to securing our water supplies, but does it have to cost more? Does an innovative, transformative process have to ultimately cost consumers more? What's your take on that, Emmanuel?
No, my take is very simple. It does have to cost more. In fact, when you do the application of a nature-based solution, it costs less. Because before we start the water fund journey in 2016, we start first with the business case. Me, I'm from private sector. Everything must have to do with the numbers. So you need to see input, output, where is the balance? So the business case, we made sure that for every dollar we invest in the water fund, we get more $2 plus in returns. So which means it's a proper investment in the nature. So it makes pretty good sense. Now, I'll give another practical example here in the city of Nairobi. When there is no water and you have to buy a water, there are tankers coming with the water. A 5,000 liter truck, that costs about $30, which is an extremely high tariff. So people are paying more for water. Now, when you realize that, you see that all the stakeholders need to come together, which also did it through PPP partnership. And then first you identify, every stakeholder needs to be identified with their own individual role. First time we have the active actors. So those are now people who do the conservation. We call them the farmer, the landowners who are living along the rivers. And then we have the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are now the residents of the city who want water, people consume electricity, and then the factory who need water. And then you need a third level of stakeholder who are what you call it, the enabler. The enabler are people now who are linking the people at the top who consume water with the people at the top who do conservation. So when you have a three level of stakeholder together, you map the problem, you show the different alternatives, you show the required investment and the saving you bring, then it's a pretty very simple. That's why so far we managed so far to do what we've done. So far with that, let's say, any level of incentives from policy or regulatory body. But now we feel like because the demand across the country is so huge, it is the level now to discuss this topic at the national level, how you can have a level of, let's say, levies as incentive for the people to do the groundwork in order to bring the benefit of the people in the city. So it requires consultation, it requires dialogue, it requires facts and numbers, because you need to table numbers which show the truth so that the people can be able to make decisions. Absolutely, and I think it's very important that such NBS which are implemented come with an innovative character, because to implement nature-based solution, to make it work, it needs to be innovative, because you only change through innovation. Otherwise, whatever method was there before, which never led to a solution, never worked. So you need to have a level of innovation, and the innovation can only be applied when all the stakeholders understand and are committed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. I'm going to, at this point, remind the audience you've been invited by our colleagues to put forward your questions in the chat. So please don't be shy. Feel free to do that. And whilst the audience is thinking about that, I'm going to come back to a theme. You just mentioned it there, Emmanuel. You talked about evidence and science, and Muriel, it really struck me. You emphasised that point as well. You talked about the crucial importance of having a science-based approach. So Muriel, is there, in your view, enough being invested in developing the science in the area of nature-based solutions for water resilience? And what do you see as the key opportunities to develop the science base going forward? And that's for you, Muriel, to perhaps start on that. But I'll come to the other panelists as well. What more is needed to promote and roll out the science that can help accelerate their work in this space?
I would say maybe just to start and leave my colleagues just to complete or share their thoughts. I think, like, I don't know if there is really a NBS scientific specialty to be developed. I think what is important is to leverage knowledge and understanding of our academics, of the university, of the student, and to continue just to develop some science around the water science, the soil science, the impact on fertilizer, for example, and everything. Especially on hydrogeology, where I was really pushing to have some internal expert team. It came from few discussion at the local level with the local governments, local organizations, and academics, that in some place, not everywhere, of course, but in some country, in some place, that they had no expertise or skills on, for example, hydrogeology, on groundwater management, and geophysics or whatever. And especially, for example, in Indonesia, these specialties were not developed. So the level of understanding about what's happening was quite low, and so it's difficult for them just to explain and engage the government and the administration. So we have been working with them just to establish some special courses and to develop some filière, just to develop this understanding. And that's why the collaboration, we think, between our expert team and the local ones on the field, working on the concrete projects close to the population, is really crucial. In some other country that they have a good network, knowledge, understanding about hydrogeology and groundwater. So the point is really just to make sure that, again, it's a question of language and connection in between the technical people that know a lot, I would say, and the people that need this information, translate this information to transform it on projects, on assessment and projects, and to engage the people. So NBS is, I would say, has a name, as a concept is quite new, but I would say that there is decades that the local people, the farmers, they are working on such kind of projects. So we need maybe science to support or accelerate, I would say, maybe the implementation of some practices. I think it would be interesting in some places. and do it and share it with the maximum of people that we can to accelerate the implementation of NDS. In this sense, yes, we need science just to help us on acceleration. But I'm not really an expert on agronomy, so I will stop there. Maybe you know better than me.
We're not asking you to be an expert on agronomy. That's really helpful. I mean, I think what we're hearing, what we're taking away from what you're saying there is that, putting the emphasis on leveraging the science that's there, some great science, and sharing that and transferring that and rolling that out for generations to come. Truca, is that something that you would identify with? What's Cargill's experience, and is there yet more science that needs to be developed, or is it more of a case of sharing what we already have?
So, well, I can on one hand echo somewhat what Maria said about like the importance of leveraging the science there and the knowledge that people have. One of the things that's always been striking for me is like for any stakeholder or definitely any company that is involved in the food, beverage, and agricultural sector, all of us know that like if you look at your water footprint, at your water impact, it won't be in your operations, it will be in your supply chain. However, if you look at where the targets are related to water, they're quite often, for many companies, still focus on their operations. And if you're lucky, they focus on the regions behind around their operations. But the number of companies that really looked at where do I have to take action in my supply chain, and what is the desired change that's actually needed to get that within sustainable thresholds. That is the data-driven approach that not many companies have taken. And quite often they hide behind saying the data is not available or that supply chain is too complex. One of the things that we have seen through like going through this journey, so we've mapped our supply chain. We looked at for each of these watersheds, what is the desired needs. It shows that it is possible. Yes, it's a massive exercise and it requires adaptability. It requires like making assumptions, but you also see that like the key here is really prioritizing action. For us, one of the great learnings is like the moment that you're looking at a global crop production region, there's some crops, like for example, when we grow corn in the US, it's like if you are more on the eastern side, is often not irrigated. If you're on the western side, it's irrigated. So you start looking at where is it irrigated? And then you're starting to overlay, it's like where actually is it facing water stress? All of these data are publicly available. There are tools, great tools that are out there that can be leveraged. And however, still we see many companies saying it's like, we don't know where to focus. And they start with these initial stages of saying, well, we know, like, it's some things are obvious. There's the no regret projects. It's just like when you open the tap and there's no water, when you only see dead fish in the river or no fish at all, there you know that you have to do something. But I think we can move beyond that and leverage the science to say, what is the desired change in that watershed? Where is my footprint? And how can I contribute? How can I drive meaningful change? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that we can do as a private sector. But you can do the same thing from other stakeholders, like from a government perspective, looking at like what is grown in this region and what is renewably available, and then making up the balance and saying, well, what is the desired change? How can we get this region within its renewable water supply? And then how can we drive the change and who are the actors there? Mm-hmm. And then engaging in those sectors. And that's science, data-driven approach of really prioritizing action and becoming more effective with where we drive change is something that I would love to see more and more that we take that next step. And then from there on, you build into like tapping in that local knowledge, that like those local universities, those local stakeholders that really already know their local context, mm-hmm. and say, get to a next level. But we need to bring that down and start prioritizing.
Thanks, Truca. I saw you nodding there, Manuel. I'm also going to invite Saswati to come back in, and I'm going to check whether we had any other audience questions in the meantime. We've got 5 minutes left to go, so I'm going to invite you all to just reflect for a moment on the future. And I'm going to come to you each in a moment to say, to tell us what excites you the most about the opportunities you see in this space going forward. So I'll start with you, Muriel, and Emmanuel, and Trigger. But before I do, Saswati, listening to all of that, what would be your key takeaways? And is there anything that you would like to add based on TNC's experience working in this space?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think this has been a really interesting, exciting discussion, and I've been listening quite closely, and a few things that really struck out for me. And for the first is on incentives, which I think most of the panelists has talked about. And I think that's a really important question, because the food systems that are currently in place have been designed decades back to feed the world. They did so very successfully, but they did not put in systems that could also meet our environment and our nutrition and other inclusiveness goals. So I think now that we think through it, we should also look at how do we realign incentives on the ground, and how can policies and others create the market signals, businesses also transform their supply chains and others to lead us there. And then that also brings us to the question of science. And I think we are seeing a lot of interesting science coming out, but I also feel that we need more evidence base in countries and regions. And we are seeing that how can we have more context specific science that can help advance this. But work and the lastly is the question of partnerships. I think it's becoming really clear that if we want to do systems approach, we need coalitions and partnerships, and how, like, implementing partners, local organizations, others who can lead this work. But I find it also really a very positive direction that the food systems are going. I mean, if you look at the UN Food Systems Summit, this is the first time that the summit actually talked about, say, environment and nutrition and water and water resilient food systems. This is the first time in a COP that even agriculture was even previewed. So I think in that sense, I think the more that we can work together towards advancing these through partnerships and coalition building will get us to that, let us meet those outcomes.
Thank you, Saswati. So if I turn back to the other panelists, and with just a few minutes to go, in just a couple of sentences each, let's to finish, invite you all to tell us, what do you see as the most exciting opportunity? What excites you in this space going forward? And then we'll bring the session to a close. So let's start with you, Emmanuel, if I may.
Thank you. What is exciting is that so far the methodology which has been applied with the nature-based solution were responsive methodology, right? We notice there is a problem, we need to address it, because otherwise a lot of things are at risk. Now, in combination with the science and technology available now, where I supported the future now to move nature-based science much more in a predictive methodology to anticipate with the early warning system that can help us to prevent those disaster problems. Because as we all know, in most of cases, it costs more to solve the problem than to prevent it. So where I wish to have more done, especially with academia and the research sciences, to find a method that typical nature problem can be identified much more early before there is a problem at our doors. So that's what I see as an opportunity for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for summarizing, Emmanuel. Truca, if we can go next to you, keep it really short, and then I'll invite Muriel.
I can keep it really short. Like, what excites me most is like the opportunities that we have with like working together with agriculture. Like really, like what I've heard today is like this is alignment, at least like among us in the panel, is like agriculture is really a solution in how we can achieve so many of these food secure systems, and putting farmers central to these solutions is something that excites me.
Nature agriculture partnerships, I love it. Thank you. And Muriel.
We try to make it short. So I would say consensus. We know part of the solutions, and putting the farmers at the heart and soil, I would say in general, putting at the heart of the transformation will make the difference tomorrow. And what is also exciting me is just to see that the financial organizations are really moving on the good direction to support this transition. And that's for me really something, it's a huge opportunity that could make the difference tomorrow.
Money will make the difference indeed. Thank you, Muriel. So with that, it's my turn to thank you all. Thank each of the panelists and Saswati as well. You really have informed this discussion richly this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing more from each and every one of you in due course. To the audience, thanks very much. I think there will be a link to listen again circulated, and I'd like to say thank you to the organisers, to the ALO, to the Forum for Future of Agriculture. It's been my pleasure. Thank you and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.